All right, Shalom. I want to start off by giving our praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakakwadash. I'd like to give double honors unto the apostles and the artists of great millstone who I learned this truth from. And I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. And today, just going to be a quick lesson, you know, based off something I heard today. The inspiration comes from, something I overheard a guy at my job say, as a customer. Again, not gonna say where I work, what brothers know where I work at, man. But as Jake came in, and he's talking to, one of the cashiers, and excuse me, Slakia. He's talking about how everyone, in his house, is sick, his kids and his woman is sick, right? And then as Jake literally says, man, oh well, there needs to be another lockdown, man. They need to lock it, they need to lock the country down again. Not understanding what he's saying is going to happen again. And when it does happen, it's going to be the real thing, So this Jake really doesn't understand what it was he's saying. He's saying, it needs to be another one. Well, there is going to be. And just understand that, just like it was in 2020, it's not going to be like that, man. It's going to be way worse. There's actually going to be a curfew. If you get found outside after the curfew time, I'm just going to say, let's say if the curfew time is 9 p.m. If you're found outside after 9 p.m., then you're going to be hauled off to a concentration camp, or, they may just take you out. Who knows? We just have to wait and see until we get there, but just understand, you don't understand what it is you asking for, but you niggas gonna get exactly what y'all asking for, man. And then, I came across this earlier too, which to add to this lesson. So it says Michigan among worst hit as flu season hits 25-year high with super flu outbreaks. So a lot of people out here in Michigan have been getting sick. Just Michigan alone, I've been hearing, other brothers, do videos about how they've caught, colds, they've gotten sick, but they're saying this quote unquote super flu, is worse out here in Michigan right now. So this is from Dearborn Scope. It says flu activity has surged to levels not seen in a quarter century, with infections spreading rapidly through communities throughout the region. The sharp rise is raising serious concerns among health officials and residents alike. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's most recent data, Michigan is now classified at the highest alert level, underscoring how extensive the outbreak has become. The CDC estimates that by Saturday, December 27th, the flu had sickened at least 11 million people nationwide. So 11 million people caught this cold, because I know I did, and now I'm still battling this cough, man, which is just insane because when I catch colds, man, it's usually not for that long. I'll say probably, if not a couple days, like a week max, But just like I was telling my sister, man, like this isn't normal, and even other brothers, this is not normal at all, man, because I don't get sick like that. But continuing, it says the flu had sickened at least 11 million people nationwide, resulting in roughly 120,000 hospitalizations and about 5,000 fatalities. So far, 5,000 people have died, from this particular variant. So who knows? This may just be the one, just like the C-19. They're saying, oh, whoa, well, we may have to, lock the country down again, because this particular, sickness is going around. Everyone's getting sick. So, who knows? Well, the elites know, the Heavenly Father know, but, as far as us, who knows if they're going to use this. Because one thing, I forget which one of them said it, but, never let a good crisis go to waste. So, Again, they could use this particular situation. Also, the situation that just happened in Minnesota where you had an ICE agent, shoot a civilian in the face. It could be a number of things that can take place this year, man. 2026 is already on a roll because we can clearly see that, man. It's about to be bad this year. Because everyone that was complaining about 2025, being bad, don't worry. 2026 is going to be worse. Now, now what, 6-7 days in, it's a lot of madness going on, man. And a lot of madness that's going to continue to go on, right? So, finish reading this because it's kind of long. But it says, compounding the situation, visits to outpatient clinics for flu-like symptoms across the U.S. have reached their highest point since tracking began in 1997. The CDC reports, as of Monday, hospitals across Michigan reported 818 patients hospitalized with influenza, including 759 adults and 59 children. According to the Michigan Health and Hospital Association, while most flu-related hospitalizations involve patients ages 75 and older, state data shows that children 4 and younger represent the second highest hospitalization rate. At the same time, at the same time, 540 hospitalized patients in Michigan have tested positive for the C19, said Jim Lee, Senior President of Policy and Data Analytics for the association. Those figures do not include the thousands of people seeking treatment at emergency rooms, urgent care centers, and doctors' offices for flu, C19, and other respiratory illnesses. The health providers say the overlap of multiple viruses is putting added strain on the system. When you combine flu and the CVID with RSV, the common cold, and rhinovirus, Michigan is dealing with widespread illness, said Dr. Terry Matthews, CEO and medical director of Lansing Urgent Care. The current spike in flu cases is believed to be linked to the newer strain, H3N2 subclad K, often referred to as the superflu. How well this season's flu, juicy juice, protects against the strain remains uncertain, though health experts emphasize that, fill in the blank, can still lessen the severity of illness even if it does not fully prevent infection. So, Slocky. So even, they're pushing, the juice for this particular, flu strain, as they're saying. But they're saying even if it doesn't prevent it, which it won't, because even if you go roll up your sleeve and get that shot, it's not going to stop you from getting sick, because they just said 11 million people nationwide got sick. I caught this, man. My sister has it, my niece, my mother, people are catching colds all over. This is not normal. It's not normal at all. And that Jake at, my job earlier, man, you just don't understand what you asking for, right? So I'm going to start with the book of Jeremiah, chapter 28 and verse 8. And it says, the prophet that have been before me and before thee of old prophesied both against many countries and against great kingdoms, of war and of evil and of pestilence. And right, man, the message remains the same, that the prophets of old have talked about, and that the prophets that are back on the earth today in this current time are talking about, man. War, evil, and pestilence. We're seeing, the different wars that are taking place, and we're getting ready to see, World War III take place very soon, right? But evil, the days that we're in are evil, man, and they're going to get worse. And it says of what? Of pestilence, man. Let's get that, because that's the main thing I want to focus on at this particular time, right? And it says pestilence. I hate when they use the same word to define a word. It says pestilence, plague, murrain, cattle disease, cattle plague. So it's an illness, just to put it plainly. A sickness, and this particular flu strain that is going around is a pestilence. And they may, I'm not saying this is fact, but they may just use this particular, season, flu season, because that's usually what they call it, around the winter time, when it gets cold like this, flu season, because again, people are known to get sick during the colder seasons, man, but they very well could use this thing to lock down the country again. And yet again, man, gotta go to it, because I was thinking about this earlier. Like, this dude, man, you Jakes just really don't give thought to the things that you say. Like, you really don't. This is the book of Matthew, chapter 12, and verse 36, and it says, "But I say unto you, that every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give account thereof in the day of judgment." Now, even though he didn't say anything crazy, it's still the fact that you didn't give much thought to what you said. You're saying, oh yeah, well, it needs to be another lockdown. Oh, there is, but trust and believe it's not going to be to your benefit. Once they lock the country down again, and they will do it, it's going to be the real thing, man. It's not going to be a joke, because just like in 2020, man, that was just a test run just to see how many people would comply, and what most of America did. And they said only essential workers. Who's to say, whatever jobs they're going to deem as being essential, the people that actually need to be outside, when this happens. This is not a joke, man. You really don't understand what's about to take place on this earth. You don't. But, you're going to get exactly what you're asking for. So, let's get the book of Matthew, chapter 24, and verse 6. And it says, "And ye shall have wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet." And right, we're still hearing of wars, rumors of wars right now. Big T, he invaded, Venezuela. Now there's talks of him wanting to, gain control of Colombia and, take over Greenland. This man is starting wars, with these particular moves that he's making, and the nations are angry, they are. So books like Revelation, the 17th chapter, that's coming to pass, man, where it clearly says that the 10 horns, will be angry at the whore, which, America's allies, they're going to be, excuse me, Slocky, if they're not already, America's allies are going to be angry at her, once it's all said and done, because again, what this man is doing, the moves he's making, is not looking good. Everybody's angry at America right now, and rightfully so. Because again, as other brothers have been saying, America has been the hammer of the earth, man. America is known for going to other countries, stealing their resources, sending, economic hitmen, to go over there and get them to comply with whatever they want them to comply with, set up a central bank if they don't want a central bank, steal the resources if they have oil or gold, what do? Bomb them to hell and back, if they don't comply. But eventually that's all going to come back on America, So you people that still have hope in this place, yeah, you're about to see this place crumble. Well, it's already crumbling, but this place is going to fall bad. So I'm going to get verse 7. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. And right, if I'm not mistaken, I think it may have been the elder Munatazakba, down in South Carolina. He mentioned that it was an earthquake. I think he said in Japan. If it was not Japan, it's somewhere over in the east, that took place earlier today, man. So, you have earthquakes that are taking place, in parts of the world. The famine is still looming, here in America, because again, the primary people that were helping to bring the food in, the produce in, are scared to go to work. And I'm talking about, Issachar, because they're the main ones that will be out in the fields, picking the produce, the different fruits and vegetables that, that are in the grocery stores. Because, the ICE is out here still rounding them up, still giving them hell. And eventually it's going to spill over to the Southern Kingdom. Because again, if I'm not mistaken, I forgot when the exact date was where, Big T said he was going to start coming after Haitians, right? And then who's to say that, they don't know who's Haitian and who's not? Because again, the so-called Haitians, which are the tribe of Levi, they're dark-skinned too, They're dark-skinned just like Judah. So they're going to come after us. You know what I'm saying? So just be prepared for that. Verse 8, it says, all these are the beginning of sorrows. And right, these are all the beginning of sorrows. Where man, the pages, it's looking at the pages, but the words are leaping off the pages at this point, man. Seeing all of these things take place. This is how you know we're at the end. So let me see. Grab this real quick. And yeah, I'll get Ephesians chapter 5. I'll start at verse 15. It says, see then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise. The word circumspectly or circumspect, means to look, to look around, to keep your head on the swivel, because what? Verse 16, it says, redeeming the time, because the days are evil. And indeed, man, these days that we're living in are evil, and they're going to get worse. Because again, the time of Jacob's trouble is here, but it's just going to intensify more and more as time progresses until all hell fully breaks loose, man. Because this is going to be, terrible. It's going to be a terrible time upon the earth, man. And we're seeing that with the various things that are going on, right? And I'm going to get this. This is the book of 2nd Esdras, chapter 15, and verse 14. Matter of fact, hold on. Before I grab that, I'll grab verse 5 first. So this is 2nd Esdras 15 and verse 5. It says, behold, saith the Lord, I will bring plagues upon the world, the sword, famine, death, and destruction. And right, this is what's coming upon the planet Earth, especially here in America, these particular things, man, because great judgment is coming to this place. And this is what we're patiently waiting for this place. And the people that control this place being the nation of Edom, and in particular Amalek, the Jewish people, we're waiting for these people to get their just due. Now the Lord is going to allow Esau to have his way one last time. He's going to allow this man to have the biggest crash out ever, because again, he knows that his kingdom is falling. This is why these particular things are happening, while they're taking place, So now I'm going to jump back to verse 14, 2nd Esdras 15 and verse 14, and it says, woe to the world and them that dwell therein, for the sword and their destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands. And right, man, this is a time that is vastly approaching. We're going to have, people, coming up against each other. A sword, the modern day sword being a gun, because again, America is the most armed nation in the world. And by that I mean, there's more guns in America than there are people, So the average American has multiple firearms, and this is what's going to be taking place. A lot of shootings are going to be taking place. People are going to be taking each other out because there's going to be a famine, which is going to mention, right? So verse 16, it says, "For there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power." And right, just like it says, people are going to invade one another. Why? To take whatever food or resources they have to try to survive, man, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all going to boil down to. It's going to go from, this quote unquote normal, because this is the new normal, which is not normal, but the regular, day to day, hustle and bustle, that's all going to come to an end, man. Everybody's going to be in survival mode, once all hell fully breaks loose. And it says people are going to take actions into their own hands, so they're not going to care what, excuse me, Slakia, they're not going to give a damn what the mayor has to say, the governor, the senator, or even the president himself. These high-ranking officials, people aren't going to care what they have to say, because they're going to be hungry, they're going to be desperate. People are going to be out here doing things that they never thought they would be capable of doing, or doing things that they never thought they would do, so they're not going to care. Verse 17, and it's the main point from what that Jake said earlier, right? It says, "A man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able." And what is that? Martial law. You're not going to be able to freely travel, to the neighboring city, or, the neighboring state, or wherever. You're not going to be able to travel freely like you are now. Because again, excuse me, because again, right now, now you have to have the so-called real ID to be able to travel. And if you don't have, your proper documents, then you're going to be charged, I forget what, $40 or $45 or something like that, at least at the airport. If you don't have, a passport or the real ID, it's getting more difficult, man. You're not going to be able to freely travel like that. Because again, once this lockdown happens, troops are going to be out on the street, man, and it's going to be the real thing. They're going to be kicking doors in. They're going to be hauling people off to concentration camps. They're also going to be executing people on site, man. This is why they have the red list, the yellow list, and the blue list, man. Or I ain't said in order, but either way, the yellow list being those that are going to comply. The blue list being those that follow the people on the red list. The red list being, outspoken ministers. If I just remember, just one of the things it said directly about those people, and what the people on the red list have to go. Meaning the people that speak out against, the United States government, and the things that are, and the things that they're doing, just exposing the evil that is going on, man. They're going to want to take you out, because this is a very serious thing. And brothers say this all the time, man, especially concerning, guys in these other Israelite groups, man, because a lot of you really don't understand what it is you're a part of, because this is literally life and death. We can lose our lives just for speaking the truth, man. We can be locked up for this. And that's part of what counting the cost, understanding that what we're involved in, we can lose our lives or our freedom, if not both. You can lose our freedom and our lives, because again, it's truly an act of bravery to go out and proclaim this truth, and to stand in the face of your enemy and tell him that he's going to go down, to tell him that his kingdom is going to be destroyed, to tell him that he's going to go into captivity. It's an act of bravery, man. And it's also considered, to the standards of the United States, man, it's an act of treason, because we're behind enemy lines telling them that, this place is going to go down, which it is. This is why things are going to be bad. This is why now they're starting to, implement AI to, alter brothers' videos, man. They're going to use AI to blame us and make it seem as though we're doing things that they know for a fact that we didn't do. So again, man, that's the time that we're in where heavy persecution is upon us. It's getting real out here. So I'm just going to read these last two verses and that'll be it, man. So verse 18, it says, "For because of their pride the city shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid." And right, in Jeremiah 30 and verse 6, it says men are going to be like, a woman in travail, because that's how afraid they're going to be. Like a woman getting ready to give birth, because what does a woman do? When she is in her 9th month, getting ready to deliver a child, man, she has birth pains, man. Those contractions. And the more and more intense, that pain gets, the closer and closer she gets to deliver her child, right? But the main point being is that men are going to be like women about to give birth in those days. They're going to hold their stomachs, man, because again, they're going to be scared. So all of these so-called mighty men, all of these tough guys out here, they're going to be like women in that day. And if men are going to be afraid, how much more the women, because again, it's about to get super real out here, man. It's already real, but it's about to get super real, man. We can't stress this enough. It's about to get real. America is about to get crazy. Verse 19, it says, "A man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy the houses with the sword, and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread and for great tribulation." And right, this is what's going to be taking place once people aren't able to go to the grocery store and pick up food. People are going to take whatever food their neighbor has or just roam around the city, looking for different people that have food stored up. These different doomsday preppers that have food and water and, different resources stored up, man. They're going to look for people like that and they're going to seek to take them out, man. And that's just how real it's getting, man. It's real and it's about to get realer. So that Jake earlier that said, oh, well, there needs to be another lockdown, man. They need to lock the country down again. Oh, don't worry. They will. And your black ass, you better not get caught outside when they do, because 9 times out of 10, they're either going to haul you off to a concentration camp or execute you. It's not going to be a joke. The time of Jacob's trouble is very serious, and it's to be taken serious, man, because it's about to be the worst time upon the planet Earth, just like it says in Daniel, the 12th chapter, verse 1. Like, this is no joke. This is what we're mentally and spiritually preparing for. We're entering into the worst time upon the earth, man. So all of the troublesome times that we've been in as a people, being taken into captivity by the Egyptians, the Assyrians as far as the northern kingdom, the Babylonians, the Greeks, the Romans, 70 AD, the siege of Jerusalem. None of those events are going to compare to what's about to take place on the planet Earth today, especially here in America, the time of Jacob's trouble, So, Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. I like to give double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who I learned this truth from. And I like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. Till next time I say, Shalom.